Hey everyone, Tom Voss here. I'm in the Los Padres National Forest. I'm hiking the Reyes Peak Trail. Um, Absolutely beautiful up here. We're in pine forest. We're about 7,000 feet above sea level. It's nice and cool. I don't know if you can see behind me, but we have some amazing views. I'm going to show you guys here in a little bit. But before we get started, I kind of just want to give you an overview, a rundown of what we're going to be talking about. So today we're going to be looking at moral injury versus post-traumatic stress disorder. How do they differ? How are they similar? How you can gain understanding of these concepts to make more sense of traumatic events in your life. So I want to say right out that I'm not a professional, I'm not a PhD. Everything that I'm going to be talking about has just been based solely off of what I've experienced in my life and how I've been able to move through it and how I've been able to manage it. So this is going to be a reflection on that, and I want to really show you guys around before we get started so you can kind of get a feel of the environment I'm in and enjoy it hopefully as much as I am. Talk a little bit about the similarities of moral injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. So there are some overlapping symptoms like depression, anxiety, things of that nature that can be overlapping. So when you look at post-traumatic stress disorder, you have symptoms such as insomnia or restless sleeping, or you're not getting a lot of sleep. This is something that I suffered with a lot. Depression, anxiety, avoidance. So you avoid situations and places and things that remind you of these traumatic events that have happened in your life. A big one for me was being in crowds of people. So I would do everything in my power to avoid crowds, whether it was concerts or Summerfest was a really big one where I'm from in Milwaukee, so of course that's some last place you would catch me after I got back from my deployment. So these things are what they categorize as a symptom cluster. So you can show all these symptoms, you can show a few of these symptoms depending on the severity of your post-traumatic stress. So I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress in 2008, and as I kind of mentioned before, it really didn't resonate with me. I really didn't know what it meant. I didn't feel like I had all the symptoms. I didn't feel that I had a disorder, but I did know that something was not right. Something didn't feel right. I wasn't able to engage with my family, with community. I really wasn't able to enjoy my life, and it was really impacting me in a negative way. So I knew that there was something up, but post-traumatic stress disorder really didn't resonate with me, and I really didn't think it fit what was going on. Now you have moral injury, on the other hand, that has some of these symptoms within its definition. So let's again define it. A wound to the soul, or when you experience or witness something that goes against your own deeply held moral belief system or structure. So that's inherent in war. So when I was growing up, one of the first things you learn, I think as a human being, that it's not okay to kill someone. It's not okay to take someone else's life. But in war, it is inherent. So you have no option. It's kill or be killed. So you have to make split-second decisions, and those decisions either save lives or get people killed. So that's the kind of area you're operating in. So when you look at moral injury, you're seeing that okay, I witnessed these things, I participated in these things, was I justified? Is this something that I would do outside of the context of war? What kind of person am I? Um, what are my moral beliefs now that I've witnessed and seen and done these things? Now I'm just talking in the context of war. So we're looking at moral injury right now. So you have symptoms like grief, guilt, shame, things that can't easily be medicated away. Now, here's my stance with medication. I was on medication for a long time when I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I think I was on 3 or 4 different meds, all dealing with either sleep issues, anxiety, depression, or something like that. So I think when you have such deep guilt, shame, sorrow, and these things that exist within us, you can't just cover it up, right? We have a tendency, I believe, here, at least in the United States, to treat the symptoms and not the core issue that's going on. So, oh, you're feeling depressed, here's some medication that will help you not feel depressed. But we're really not getting to what's causing the depression in the first place. So I believe that understanding the concept of moral injury, or when you see something that goes against your own moral beliefs, it leaves a mark on you, understanding that allows you to understand the trauma a little better. So I'll give you an example, a personal example of mine that that took me a long time to move through and look at and really be honest with myself about. So when I was deployed to Mosul, Iraq from 2004 to 2005, my platoon sergeant was killed in action and one of our squad leaders was killed in action. So the day my platoon sergeant was killed in action, I was given the day off. And this is something that we did to make sure that on non-critical missions, we could cycle guys out so they wouldn't get burned out. So that's the whole idea behind it. So that day was a simple mission where we were taking another group out into the city to basically take them on a little patrol to see, give them a tour of the city. It seemed like a simple mission. So what I did was like what any other guy would do who had the day off. I went to breakfast, I went to the gym, I watched some movies, all these things you don't get to do because you're just going 24/7. So I started to notice a lot of time had passed since my platoon had returned, and there's a couple other guys in my platoon with me that had the day off as well. And I just remember thinking like, man, these guys have been out for a long time and it was supposed to be a pretty quick mission. And then the sun started setting and I noticed that they still weren't back. So it wasn't until I saw them pulled up and everyone started piling out of the vehicles, and it was my team leader that pulled me aside and told me that my platoon sergeant was killed in action. So for me, being young and in the infantry, and you want to be there for the people that you're serving. You want to be next to them when things like this happen. And I wasn't there. So I had a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. How could I have done something differently? How could me being there impacted the outcome of his death differently? Why am I still alive? Why isn't he alive? He has a family, I don't. So going back and forth in my head about all these things that it took me years to figure out that I had no control over whatsoever. So looking back at this, at the guilt that I felt, that was on such a deep level that I don't think you can just medicate that stuff. You can't just medicate it away. That being said, I think that there is a place for medication. I think that you can use medication in a fashion to stabilize and help people get a solid footing and stuff, but my personal belief is not a long-term solution to help people move through trauma in their lives. So let's look at moral injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, how they've impacted my life. I'll give you some examples. For post-traumatic stress disorder, I'll just give you my concept of what I think it is. I think it's a conditioning of the body of the nervous system when you're in a dangerous situation, a traumatic situation. It could be short or it could be prolonged. Mine specifically was prolonged. It was in a combat zone for 12 months, and your body gets conditioned to being in that environment. So when you come home, you don't have to have your guard up. You're not in this dangerous environment anymore, but your body still feels like it is because it's been such a long time. So this would manifest in my life like seeing a trash bag on the side of the road. I would move over 3 lanes on the highway to get as far away from it as I could, because that's what we did in a combat zone. And so it was so ingrained in me that when I saw that on the side of the road, there was a physical reaction in me. My anxiety would go up, and I knew I needed to move away from it because that was the safest action for me. So that's one way post-traumatic stress has manifested in my life when I first got back. Now, I think the overlap where post-traumatic stress happens and moral injury happens as well is the reflection piece. So I think that post-traumatic stress, at least for me, it's somewhat got less intense as time went on. And moral injury started coming to the forefront after that. So you start questioning after you're out of the military because you're not in that culture anymore. You don't have to maintain. You can really redefine who you are and kind of figure out who you're going to be after that, because everything in the military, is done for you. So you have your housing, your food, your pay, everything is taken care of you, and all you have to do is follow directions pretty much to the most part, and everything's taken care of. So when you get out, it's like, okay, who am I now? How am I going to redefine myself? How am I going to get a job? What am I going to do? X, Y, and Z. And so you try to start lining that stuff up. So I think for me, in my experience at least, I started thinking about what I had participated in, just in general. No politics attached to this, but just in general war. What did I participate in? How did it impact people that were in that city? How did it impact me? How did it impact people around me, my family? And I was pretty overwhelmed by that. Just thinking about, the impact that I had as one soldier, let alone the whole war that had been taking place there. So you start asking yourself questions. Was this justified? Were the things that I saw could have been avoided? Civilians' deaths specifically. Did that have to happen? Did that have to go down that way? The orders that you received, was that the right call? As a lower enlisted soldier, I have no say in anything that happens when it comes to orders. So they come down, you execute them. That's it. But when you get out and you start processing, okay, this mission was a little messed up. Maybe he made the wrong call. Maybe I did the wrong thing. Or maybe I should have done X, Y, and Z. So you start going over these different things, and I think this is where the moral dilemma comes. And this is not saying that you're an immoral person for participating in war. I believe that military is an essential function of our society in this day and age. So it's not to say that you're an immoral person. It's not to say that you've done something bad. But what it is saying is that you're reflecting on your own moral values versus what you've witnessed, what you participated in. Do they line up? And for me, being in a combat zone, they didn't line up. So I had to ask myself, what kind of person are you? And I think here's a pitfall that happens with a lot of veterans and civilians is you come home and you're looked at as a hero. You're called a hero. There's parades, all that kind of stuff. Your family throws you parties, all these different types of things, and you don't feel that way inside. because of what you've seen and what you've witnessed, the death, the destruction, these things that I'll never forget, and they'll be with me for the rest of my life. Right from the beginning, there's a mismatch in that. So being called a hero, not feeling like a hero, that's a moral dilemma, at least in my eyes. So when looking at moral injury, it really gives you a time to reflect deeply on who you are as a person. Who do I want to be as a person? How am I going to define myself? These different things based on the traumatic events that you've experienced. So looking forward, you can really use moral injury and how it makes you feel and the things that you've experienced and use that as a healing tool. So I've experienced, extreme violence. So how am I going to respond to that? How am I going to respond to that as a person, as a human being? I'm going to advocate as much as I can for nonviolent solutions. That's my response to that. So in a public way, in public forums, whatever you can say, because I've experienced that and because it's wounded me, these experiences have wounded me, I know now a better way. So if you can make those types of connections and kind of put the lens of moral injury over the events that you've experienced, you can use them as a healing process. So I think that's enough for today. If you have any questions, please leave them below. Drop me a message. Make sure you subscribe. That way we can have those conversations. Keep them coming. Keep talking about this stuff because it's really important when we're understanding things that have happened in our lives, how we can move through them together. And it's going to take communities and forums and talking and expressing and understanding to make that happen. Thank you again.